Another day, another story. There have been concerns about escalating tensions between Iran and Israel, but no official confirmation of a full-scale conflict that would lead to a World War III scenario. Iran and Israel have been in a prolonged state of hostility, particularly due to issues surrounding Iran's nuclear program and its influence in the region. Israel has targeted Iranian assets and allies in places like Syria, and both countries have engaged in cyber warfare and other proxy activities. Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. If there were a significant military confrontation between the two nations, it could draw in other regional and global powers, but the situation remains complex and involves diplomacy and strategic maneuvering. Several world powers, including the US, Russia, and European nations, have interests in stabilizing the region to avoid escalation. Tensions between Iran and Israel reached a new high in October 2024, when Iran launched a massive ballistic missile attack targeting key sites in Israel. This attack, codenamed Operation True Promise 2, involved nearly 200 missiles fired from Iran, hitting areas across Israel, including cities like Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. The strike followed a series of escalations, with Israel previously assassinating key Iranian, Hamas, and Hezbollah leaders, including Hassan Nasrallah and Ismail Haniyeh, both of whom were allies of Iran. Israel responded by placing its military on high alert and promising significant retaliation. The US intervened by deploying missile interceptors to help defend Israel, as fears grew that the conflict could spiral into a broader war. Both Israel and Iran warned of further consequences if either side escalated the situation, raising concerns about regional instability and potential involvement from other global powers. Though this incident has intensified fears of a wider Middle Eastern conflict or even World War III, diplomatic efforts are underway to prevent further escalation. Both nations are deeply entrenched in proxy conflicts across the region, which complicates the situation but makes direct, sustained warfare less likely in the immediate term. The escalating conflict between Iran and Israel in October 2024 is rooted in a series of retaliatory attacks, with major developments from both sides. Iran's missile barrage against Israel came after Israel had assassinated several high-profile leaders connected to Iran's regional allies, such as Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah and Hamas's Ismail Haniyeh. The missile strikes, one of the largest since the beginning of the Iran-Israel conflict, targeted strategic areas, including military bases and even civilian locations, leading to casualties and property damage. Despite the severity of the attacks, Israeli officials, aided by US missile defense systems, managed to intercept many of the missiles. However, the fallout left 2 Israelis injured and caused damage in cities like Tel Aviv. What is particularly alarming about the current situation is that both nations have issued strong threats. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed a forceful response to Iran, warning that the Islamic Republic made a big mistake. Iran. Additionally, the US has become increasingly involved, deploying military assets to the region to assist in missile defense and preparing for further escalation. American military aid to Israel, including interceptor systems, played a significant role in reducing the potential impact of the Iranian strikes. However, US officials remain cautious about how deeply they will involve themselves in a potential direct conflict. The broader context of this conflict involves not just the direct confrontation between Iran and Israel, but their respective alliances across the Middle East. Iran supports groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, while Israel maintains ties with the US and other regional powers like Saudi Arabia and Jordan. The risk of a regional war looms large, though international diplomatic efforts are being made to prevent further escalation. This ongoing situation reflects long-standing tensions, and both nations are locked in a complex web of proxy battles and strategic strikes. For now, the world watches to see if diplomacy can cool the heated atmosphere, or if further military action will push the conflict into dangerous new territory. The ongoing Iran-Israel conflict has deepened significantly with the October 2024 missile strike by Iran on Israel. This action is part of a broader pattern of escalating military and proxy engagements that date back several years. Iran's attack, involving nearly 200 ballistic missiles, struck key Israeli targets, including military installations and urban centers. The geopolitical stakes are high. While Israel has signaled its intent to respond forcefully, the United States has already increased its military presence in the region, deploying fighter jets and missile interceptors to protect Israel and potentially prevent a broader regional war. U.S. President Joe Biden's administration has voiced strong support for Israel, with national security advisors emphasizing that the U.S. would collaborate closely with Israel to ensure Iran faces consequences for its missile attack. Despite the heavy missile exchange, reports suggest that most of the Iranian missiles were intercepted, limiting casualties and damage in Israel. However, there remains significant concern that this back-and-forth conflict could pull other regional actors into the fray. Jordan and Saudi Arabia, both U.S. allies, have been drawn into missile defense operations, and Iran has threatened further crushing responses if Israel retaliates. The broader context includes long-standing animosities over Iran's nuclear ambitions, Israel's military actions in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza, and the influence of proxy groups supported by Iran. Both nations are using proxies and asymmetric warfare tactics to avoid direct, large-scale warfare. But the latest missile strikes bring the risk of a larger conflict closer than ever. The question now is whether international diplomacy can de-escalate the situation, or if the region is on the brink of a wider war. The Iran-Israel conflict in October 2024 is escalating, potentially drawing more nations into the fray. Iran's missile strike against Israel, involving nearly 200 ballistic missiles, represents the most severe attack in recent years. The missiles targeted strategic areas across Israel, including military bases and populated cities like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. This assault follows Israel's assassination of key figures connected to Iran, including Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, fueling Iran's retaliation. Iran framed its missile strike as a response to these actions, calling it a defense of its national interests and sovereignty. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed retaliation, and the Israeli military remains on high alert for potential counterattacks. The U.S. has taken a strong stance in supporting Israel, deploying military resources to defend against further missile attacks. American officials, however, are cautious about how deeply they should get involved in a conflict that could destabilize the entire region. The situation is further complicated by the involvement of regional actors like Hezbollah and Hamas, both of which are backed by Iran. The international community is closely watching to see how Israel will respond, as both sides have warned of further escalations if provoked. If the conflict continues to intensify, it could draw in other nations and potentially destabilize the wider Middle East, raising concerns about a much larger conflict. Diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation are ongoing, but the outlook remains uncertain. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.